and would like to welcome everyone to the ninth episode of PAASE Fireside Chat. And for you who do not know yet enough about PAASE, we have a website at paase.org, and we are comprised of about 380 PhD level scientists, engineers, and MDs who are based in the Philippines, mostly in UP, Academe, LaSalle, UST, and other universities, and TIP and SUCS, and universities in the United States, Europe, and Australia. And PAASE was founded in 1980 by a group of engineers led by Professor Severino Co. So we share the advocacies and the goals, of course, of the National Academy of Science and Technology and of the universities. Now we find ourselves very closely interacting with people during development. So today we have two guests, discussants, and I think that, we have to thank ERDC for this. They are outstanding graduates of electrical engineering of the UP Diliman, and they would like to share with us their insights on how we can bring Academe and to move forward our innovative products and services. So their insights are valuable, and I would like to start by introducing our first discussant, and that is I'm now going to get to well, the credentials of our first speaker. This is Chicho Mantaring, known to many of us already. He was a former head of design and development of Asia of Integrated Microelectronics, former president of ROM LSI Design Philippines, and presently, this after retirement, back to UP as professorial lecturer of the Electrical and Electronics Engineering EEE Institute of UP Diliman. And I understand working closely with Louis Season of BDO and of Enterprise to mentor many of our young innovators and startup graduate students and graduates in UP. So, Chicho, would you now?
Yeah, thank you very much, Giselle. Giselle, how much time would you want me to take?
So I'm not sure now if you have a another meeting at 9, but there are only two of you, and we normally spend an hour and a half, even 2 hours for this chat. So you can take, I don't know, 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I prepared a short presentation, if you allow me to.
Of course. So let me just stop sharing my share, and I will make you a co-host. Just a moment. Let me do this now. But before that, I have to admit people in. And so, Chicho, we are going to make you a co-host so you can share your screen now. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, can people see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, the title of my talk is Electronics Manufacturing, Challenges, Innovation-Driven Initiatives, and Growth Areas. So I tried to align with the theme of the Fireside Chat. Yeah, I'm going to focus on the electronic manufacturing services industry. This is an industry which I spent almost 20 years of my professional life in. And I want to distinguish this from the semiconductor manufacturing services industry. I was working with IMI, and when people would hear you're working with IMI, they would ask, "Oh, so you're with the semicon industry?" And I would have to say, no. The EMS industry, we build products, whereas the semicon industry, they package semiconductors. So the two are really very different. To give you better context on what I'm going to be talking about, I just wanted to mention a few things about IMI. We are well, I say we, although I don't really belong to them anymore, no? We are a multinational EMS company headquartered in the Philippines with 22 factories across 10 countries. IMI covers Asia, North America, and Europe. With respect to the other EMS providers in the world, we are in the top 20. Maybe the most notable EMS provider is Foxconn, Honhai. They're the ones that build all of the Apple products. They turn over around $200 billion a year, whereas IMI turns over probably $1.5 billion a year. But in terms of the automotive market, IMI is the fifth largest EMS provider for the automotive market. That is building electronic products for automobiles. In terms of factory space, they have more than 400,000 square meters of factory space. So this is the outline of my talk. I'm going to give first a historical perspective of this industry in the Philippines. Then I'm going to talk about the challenges of the industry. Then how we transitioned, special case of IMI, how we transitioned into becoming an engineering solutions provider. I'm going to talk about some of the innovation-driven initiatives of the company, and then lastly, some growth areas. Okay, so just some historical perspective. If you take a look at this industry in the Philippines, this was a consignment business until the 1990s. What does this mean? The OEM, or the original equipment manufacturer or the customer, would provide the equipment, the materials, and the technology. And the contract manufacturer would just provide labor and management. The typical product that was being built by this industry then were products that were already mature, had been running for a while in the facilities of the customer, and wanting to scale and looking for a cheaper manufacturing site. The customer would, in effect, transport the entire line to the Philippines. So they would provide the materials, the equipment, the technology. They would even station people here. So this was how the business was until the 1990s. Okay, it evolved. It shifted to merchant services, where the contract manufacturer now would own the equipment and provide some technology. Although the key components were still consigned. Okay? Of course, the customers like this because it would require less effort from them. In other words, they would entrust the service provider more. And then this again further evolved into what is called full turnkey manufacturing, where the customer would now provide just a blueprint of the product, and the contract manufacturer would have to deliver the entire solution. So the contract manufacturer would own the equipment and would purchase all of the materials. So full turnkey manufacturing became the most common mode of the EMS industry, starting 2000s, starting later 2000s, no? Becoming maybe starting 2010, it's practically the mode of the industry now. So what are the challenges of the EMS industry? When it was a consignment business, it was relatively easy because the customer taught us how to do everything. They owned the equipment. They taught us how to do everything. They provided the materials. Therefore, if you did things right, it was really a cash cow. In fact, at that time, this was early 2000s, IMI still had a very large consignment business. They were not yet really a multinational. The turnover was probably 1/10 of the current turnover. And yet, the net income then was comparable to the net income now. So this was a cash cow. Now, when it evolved into merchant services, there was now more responsibility on the part of the contract manufacturer. Also, there were higher capital requirements. So it became important that your asset utilization was high, no, for you to be profitable. Also, you were responsible now for your mistakes, no, specifically for the processes which you provided. Okay? But still, all in all, it was a relatively good business. Now, what happened when it became full turnkey manufacturing? First of all, you needed very large working capital because you now had to provide even for materials. Then you had to set up logistics and supply chain. You had to have very competitive sources of your raw materials, of your components. And if you did not have scale, you would not have this access to this. So the margin started becoming very, very thin. Actually, all of these models relied highly on low labor cost. There was really very little differentiation. Anyway, to give you an idea of how tough this business was, at that time, this was until the early 2000s, IMI was very heavy into building IT equipment, particularly computer peripherals. To give you an idea, we were building something like maybe 1 million hard drives a month or 1.5 million optical drives a month. Okay? And this type of products, year after year, consumers expected the price to go down. I'm sure you have that experience that you have a 1 terabyte drive now. Next year, you expect the price of that to be maybe 10-20% cheaper. But the materials would hardly ever decrease in price. So what the contract manufacturer would have to do would be to look for other ways of reducing cost. That's why we became very good in operational excellence. But after we've squeezed all possibilities, then the only thing left is really to reduce your margin. So the margins were very thin. And that's why at that time, we made a deliberate effort to get out of computer peripherals. That's about the time our new CEO came in and said, no, we're in the wrong business. So we decided to focus on higher value add markets. That's when we got into automotive, when we got into industrial. Okay. But still, these were very, very tough. This was a very tough business. We said this is not sustainable. So at that time, we saw the need for higher value add manufacturing. So I'm going to talk about this journey that we had, higher value add manufacturing. The dream then was to be an engineering solutions provider with high volume manufacturing capability. So we wanted to increase the content of the engineering that we delivered to the customer. So we decided to set up groups within the company. First was the Advanced Manufacturing Engineering Group. Now, what was the mandate of this group? They would be the ones to develop the processes and the techniques for packaging the product, especially when the form factor requirement was very challenging. We became experts in what we call small precision assembly. I'm going to give you some examples of that later on. Okay, and then Test and Systems Development Group. This group was established to provide the test system for mass production for the customer. So this group was in charge of developing customized test solutions. At the same time, on the system side, they were the ones developing the automation systems for production. And then the group that I was responsible for Asia was product development. So product development, we actually were helping our customers develop their products. Their products would be in the infancy stage. I'm sure you're familiar with the technology readiness level. They would be in the TRL5 stage, and we would help bring it up to a higher technology readiness level. Or sometimes it would be a turnkey type of design project. They give us the specs, and we have to deliver the product for them. And then we also set up a reliability and failure analysis laboratory because the products that we were involved in had very stringent requirements in terms of compliance and reliability. This was actually attached to the product development group. Anyway, having established all of these groups, we were now able to provide product realization services. So initially, all of the products that we were building up to that time were products that were already mature. But now we could cater to customers whose products were not yet in the market. In other words, sometimes they were just in the drawing board stage, and we would be able to help them offer new product introduction services and product realization services. Now, to give you some of the, I would call them innovation driven initiatives of each of the groups, I have some images for you. These are, yeah, just a disclaimer, these are old images. I just tried to retrieve some of them from my baul. No? So, and I haven't been with the company for 3 years now. But just to show you, for example, in advanced manufacturing engineering, like I said, we became experts in miniaturizing things. Now, how do you miniaturize something? Well, typically you work with semiconductors or packaged die. But if you want something to be smaller, then you would work with the bare die. So we develop processes for mounting bare die directly into printed circuit boards or substrates. Sometimes we would do a substrate die attach, or what we call a flip chip. And then we could mount this on flexible substrates like this. This is a flexible printed circuit board. And then we could fold this around. No? So to give an example, this is a project that we worked on maybe 10 years ago. This is an in the ear canal hearing aid, which we packaged and produced for a US company. When you put the hearing aid in the ear, you cannot see it. No? Now, this hearing aid is not a simple hearing aid. It had a battery, it had a speaker, and it could even be remote controlled. No? You could control the volume from a remote. So this was mounted on a flexible substrate, and then the flexible substrate was folded together so that it would be very compact and that it would fit into this form factor that could be inserted into the ear. So that's just an example. Another example, no, we were doing MEMS assembly. We had a customer that had a laser scanner technology, scanning technology for projection, for video projection. And they wanted to make this fit into a cell phone. So they asked us to develop the packaging for that. So we used similar technology. This laser scanner, we were able to get into a form factor here so that it could fit into a cell phone. So if you had a video in your cell phone, you could actually project this on a wall and watch it on a wall. So that's the kind of thing that we would do. And then we would do other things like stacking boards on top of each other. But this is not that simple, because when you stack boards on top of each other, they generate a lot of heat. And therefore, we would have to do a lot of heat simulation and figure out how to disperse the heat and make sure that the expansion contraction would not cause components to break. Okay? So those are some of the things we did on the manufacturing engineering side. Now, in the test and systems development side, we developed customized test solutions. So with a customer that asked us to build an electronic control unit for their steering, for their power steering, and we had to develop the tester for the electronic control unit. We had a customer that asked us to build a power module, and the challenge with this power module was it could carry up to 600 amperes of current at 48 volts. And so we had to be able to test a module that could carry 600 amperes at 48 volts, which is more than 20,000 watts. So you can imagine the challenges behind that. And then we also developed our own production equipment. This is a focusing and alignment system for cameras. It's actually a robot, if you think about it, which was built from scratch. We were building a lot of what we call sensing cameras. These are not viewing cameras, but cameras that are used as sensors. And if you have a camera that is used as a sensor, the alignment of the lens to the image capture device must be very, very precise. And so we developed our own equipment to do that. And then we did complete automation. Complete automation. This is a complete automation solution that was developed in the Philippines but implemented in China, in one of our factories in China. Again, it was for the assembly of a power steering electronic control unit. This was the largest, well, at the time I left, this was the largest automation project that we had to date. By the way, the investment in this project exceeded, I think, $2 million. Anyway, product development. So this is where I was heavily involved in. So these are some examples of the products that we developed from scratch for the automotive market. So control units, electronic assemblies, and the like. I want to mention that the challenge in developing products for automotive is not really the functionality. It's really the compliance to standards. My team once developed a sensor module for a car. To do the proof of concept took us only 3 weeks. In other words, we proved that the concept was viable in 3 weeks. But before we were able to get it out to market, it took almost a year. That's because we had to really subject it to very, very rigorous tests. In other words, it was a very, very simple product, but anything that you put in a car has to be highly reliable. Otherwise, if something happens, you have hundreds and thousands of car units that might get recalled. There's history of that recently, recalling because of danger to the airbag system, for example. And we didn't want to be in that. We didn't want our customers to be in that situation. So we really subject everything that we develop for automotive to really torture tests. Sometimes they're in torture chambers for up to 3 months before we qualify the product. And then we also did products for industrial and medical. And then the challenges here can differ. I'd like to point out this product, a dose counter, which we developed jointly, my team here in the Philippines and the team in China. The team in China because of the supply chain advantages there. So this is used by asthma patients. They spray something into their throats whenever they're having an asthma attack, and the customer wanted an indicator of how many doses were still available in the canister. But the challenge here was this was throwaway electronics. In other words, after the canister is consumed, you throw the whole thing away. And so we were given a target of the dose counter solution complete, including manufacturing, should not cost more than $1, should not cost more than 50 pesos. And yet this contained a small computer, an LCD display, a battery, some custom tooling, a switch, and we were constrained that it would not cost more than 50 pesos. So that was the challenge of this particular project. And we actually got the bill of materials for this, with the help of our China team, down to about 50 cents. That's how challenging the project was. Now, another thing that we got ourselves involved in were product platforms. So sometimes our customers would doubt whether we knew what we were doing when we would develop products. So what we would do is we'd try to anticipate the market, and we would go ahead and develop what we call platforms to show proof of our knowledge of the product and our capability to build them. And the thing that we made a bet on at that time were sensing automotive cameras. So as I mentioned earlier, these are not cameras for viewing, but for sensing. They're used for advanced driver assistance. And we were the first globally, at least we believe we were, to be able to put together a camera in a 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch form factor. This is this device here. Okay, so that was quite challenging. Okay, we set up a reliability and failure analysis capabilities lab. So we had a lot of equipment that would allow us to determine causes of failure and how to improve the reliability of our products. I'm not familiar with a lot of this equipment. I know many of you here are more familiar with this equipment than I am. Okay, so for failure analysis uh, and so forth, no, and for reliability testing. This is something more recent. So this is in response to COVID-19. So the company decided to produce a CPAP ventilator. So for well, this is not yet your full-blown ventilator. It's really actually a CPAP machine. Okay, and this has already been approved by the Philippine FDA. In fact, this is already in the market. So this is a rare case where IMI is actually marketing a product, because usually IMI just markets a manufacturing service. But again, this is in response to the pandemic. The design for this was not done by IMI. It was done by a group in London, but the design was made open source. But again, the company had to be the one to figure out how to increase the technology readiness level, because a design is really just a design. It has to go through several stages before it can really be manufactured. Now, this is my last slide, just speaking about opportunities and growth areas. The company still is betting on automotive, although the automotive industry has really dramatically slowed down. But why the bet on automotive? No, the electronic content of cars, of vehicles in general, has been steadily increasing over the years. In fact, in many vehicles, the cost of the electronics is already 50% of the cost of the car. So in the future, the electronics content is going to surpass the 50% mark. So it's really going to be more a computer than a car. So who's supposed to build it? Is it supposed to be a car company that builds the car, or is it supposed to be an electronics company that builds the car? And the competencies needed to build the car of the future have not really been established yet. So that's one of the things that the company is betting on. Then they're making a lot of bets on renewable energy. Renewable energy solutions right now require a lot of power electronics. So they've developed a lot of capabilities in power electronics. I mentioned the power modules before, capable of handling up to 500, 600 amperes of current. So they have a facility that can produce these modules. Then recently, they purchased a company. Well, not really recently. This was about three years ago. They purchased a company in the UK, which specialized in the aerospace industry. So this is also a high growth area, especially now with all of these companies launching satellites for people to go on vacations in outer space. So they made a bet on this. And then medical, because there will always be an opportunity for lower cost medical equipment with the cost of medical care increasing constantly over the years. So these are some of the bets that the company has been making. Now, with regard to how IMI does this, I just like to mention that we've always been close to the Academe. Whenever we have problems in, most of the things we do is actually applied research. But when we have problems in very basic stuff, and most of the time our problems are in materials engineering, we always go to the Academe and engage the Academe to help us solve our problems. Okay? So we don't really try to do everything by ourselves. Anyway, I also wanted to talk a little bit about what the company had been doing in Industry 4.0. This is the new paradigm for manufacturing now. And you saw some elements of it already going into robotics and automation. A lot of the automation that we have been doing is self-developed, but some of these automation projects incorporate robots, industrial robots. And then IoT, this is interconnecting all of the production equipment together. So there have been initiatives in this area also for the purpose of collating as much data as possible on everything that has to do with production, yields, material use, stoppages, with the intent later on of using AI and analytics to try to improve productivity. And then we've also done some experimentation, at least in the time I was there, in augmented reality, using augmented reality, for example, to aid the operators while they're doing their inspection. So with the use of this augmented reality goggles, when an operator, for example, looks at a board, the board can already point out problem areas, for example, maybe components that may not be mounted properly, the like. So we actually engaged a consultant to provide this solution for us at that time. Okay. Anyway, this is my last slide. So I hope I was able to give you a view of the industry that I used to belong in, the challenges, and what we've been doing, and the possibilities for science and technology for its sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Chicho. Very, very exciting developments in your field. It's good to know that you are into the product development. Or curious whether the manufacturing is mostly abroad or in plants also here of IMI. But I think we would request Secretary Boy de la Peña of the DOST, who's here with us. Thank you, Sec Boy, to ask the first few questions and comments. Sec Boy, thank you. Kindly unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry. I would like to ask Chicho here if he has any recommendations on some major engineering R&D that should be undertaken so that we can be better prepared for whatever is forthcoming.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, Sec Boy, the problems that because for example, in product development, which is really the area that I'm very close to, it's really applied research. But well, there were certain areas that we certainly needed help in. For example, when we started developing cameras, we didn't know anything about optics. So what we did was we went to the National Institute of Physics, and then we told the PhDs there, can you please package an optics course for us? Because we wanted to be able to, for example, specify lenses that were needed for the type of sensor cameras that we were developing. And they put together a nice training package for us and taught us, and that kick-started us. So those kind of things. And then the other types of problems that we encounter really are materials. And we're grateful that there's Admatel, for example, from the DOST, which can help out in us trying to figure out, for example, what are the causes of these particular failures in the line. Although we also have our own capabilities in failure analysis. I think one and this is for the industry as a whole, not for IMI, because IMI already addresses it, but I think the industry as a whole, it is not so much addressed. When I see products that are being proposed, for example, by proponents at the DOST, they don't seem to realized the importance of having the reliability of these products tested. And there is no reliability testing facility in the Philippines that is open. For example, when Project NOAA was new, I asked them, you're going to be subjecting these electronics to environmental conditions out in the open, hot and cold, humid. Did you ever try testing this in chambers? Did you ever try varying the temperatures, over time and seeing how this would affect the components? And they would just rely on textbook reliability principles, but really no way of verifying in a lab how reliable the product is. No? Now I don't know the track record of all of these sensors that were deployed, but I would imagine some of them have probably already come back, with some failures. No? But if we had a facility like this, for example, that is provided by the government, then I think that we can instill this discipline in our developers to try to develop products with high reliability. So those would be the areas, maybe material science and reliability engineering.
Thank you, Chichoy.
Thank you. Before I pass on the moderating to Al, I'd like to say that we could go on for 2 hours or even beyond. In which case, we could exhaust the questions addressed to Chicho before we move on to Riza. So at this point, I'd like to ask Al to.
Thank you, Giselle. Can you hear me well? Thanks, Chicho, for a very comprehensive. We've worked with IMI over the years with my consultancy with USAID Stride. We actually funded the first industry Academe collaboration for lung cancer detection as well as a back pain electromagnetic pulse equipment, both from LaSalle. And part of the challenge we encountered was more of the actual crafting of the agreement rather than the project itself. Being able to parse out both the intellectual property as well as the technology development activities, moving to regulatory, which is what Chicho was mentioning, the reliability aspect. For me, being in the medical device space for about 20 years, that's the biggest challenge, is what would the regulatory industry would require of us. And I think that's probably what we need to kind of impose to our product developers, even in academia, to have at least one eye towards what the regulatory agencies would require. What's your suggestion, Chicho, on how to go about that? Because every time I talk to scientists in UP and LaSalle on tech transfer, they always say that's industry's problem. That's not our problem anymore. And only to come back with the design that it doesn't pass the regulatory hurdle or the manufacturing hurdle. So now I'm actually advising everyone to have a manufacturing read on their projects right away before you even get to the actual second prototype. So I want your input on those aspects, on how to implement it on an academic level. Say in UP alone, we have the CBOL project for our medical device development funded by DOST. How can industry come into play? I asked Sherwin from IMI to comment on our ventilator projects early on, only to find out they're not compliant. So how else can we do this, Chicho? Thank you.
That's a tough question, Al. No? Actually, ideally, manufacturing should already be involved from the beginning. No? That's why those 3 teams that I talked about, in the Philippines, we were just in one large office. We called it the technology group. No? Because whenever we would have a new project, the start of the project would really be a huddle between the 3, because the 3 would have to be talk about the concerns, no, of each other. Like, for example, when we design something and we have to constrain it to a very, very small form factor, the process people would have to buy it off. They would say no, can't do that for this and that reason. So there has to be early coordination between between the different groups. No? Now, when we're talking about research, I guess that's a little bit difficult, no? Because the objective of the researcher is really just to get the proof of concept out, no? To show that this concept is viable. And so from the product of the research to actual uh, uh, to an actual commercial product is a big gap. And right now there seems to be no entity that is taking this up, no? Because
Correct.
you ask business to take it up, they don't want to take it up because of the risk, no?
Correct.
They don't know what's going to be involved, no? So that's even in the foundation, that's something that we're trying to figure out, no? How in ERDFI, no? How can we fill up this gap, no? Now with respect to the Academe, I guess we really need more courses on the manufacturing side, no? And to be taught not by professors, but by people from the industry, because I came from the Academe, going to industry was really an eye opener for me, a lot of the things you take, it's not knowing what you don't know, actually. That's how I put it. You don't know what you don't know.
Oh, yeah.
and
Correct.
and I think it would be very helpful for the Academe to develop courses taught by actual practitioners on some of these things. I was in talk with Dr. Louis Sison. I said, Louis, why don't I put together a special course on original design manufacturing? And we started talking about it, but it takes a lot of time to put a course together. It's still in my list of things that I want to do, but and for sure I'll do it. No, I just don't know how soon I can do it.
Okay. Well, I'm with you there. I mean, we're together at UP Enterprise already, and clearly, we need to be able to be the mentors and advisors in terms of some of our early startups, not only both from the research output of UP, but hopefully, what I was asking is for us to do this nationwide for all the things that are going. I mean, the new invention out of Mapua right now for the Dyson Award is one clear example. My questions there on IP, manufacturing, and regulatory requirements for such products need to be inputted right away, and we need to reach them as soon as possible. So I think I have a question coming from CP. Do you want to ask the question, CP? You want to turn on your camera?
Can I raise one
Sige.
question? Because I have to transfer to another event. I just wanted, this is not a question, but related to what you shared. This is the case of a research project that was done by Adamson University. They came up, I'm sure you are familiar with it. They came up with the Vigormin material that is really for water treatment. And what I was impressed with was what the Adamson administration did. They really invested in putting up the manufacturing facility and asked the help of their alumni to really perfect the product and even help them in doing the marketing. That was really, to me, an impressive effort where all the, shall we say, the stakeholders in the university did their part. Thank you.
Yeah, Vigormin is a very successful technology, and I think PERDS or Manila Water ought to be using it at this point for most of their processes, if not only also to disseminate by the business groups for septic tanks all over the country. That's the application. It's an environmental play, of course. I think CP doesn't want to ask the question in person, so I'm just gonna comment about his question. Having tapped the evaluate the DOST projects, have you seen technology developed that had a big chance of getting commercialized out of all the proposals that you've reviewed with DOST and UP? That's a question from CP, Chicho. Be honest.
Yeah, I probably have a very high bar for saying whether something is really has big potential or not, no? Because I will always come from the perspective of is this something that can easily be replicated? Because a lot of times the research is just that they're the first to do it. But if you think about it, it's very easy to replicate if it's something that becomes that becomes very popular. No, so a lot of the researches that are being done by being proposed at the DOS, they are really very good researches. It's the first time that these things have been done before. But really taking a look at the technical content, whether there's really that much differentiation, I'm afraid not so much. No.
Same here. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm here. I'm behind you, telling you you're right.
Okay, Al, there are some questions in the chat box, but Val Reyes wants to speak, and then afterwards Cora, and there are some questions in the chat box.
Giselle,
Please. Ferdy, I think also.
yeah.
Right.
Just before we lose the thread on Vigormin,
Okay, please, Ferds.
yeah, actually, I would like to echo what Sec Boy said. No, Dean Dr. Merlinda Palencia actually was our first awardee when we started the Manila Water Foundation Prize for Engineering Excellence back in 2015. So we know the story of how the whole Adamson community rallied around the dean at the time, and they were also doing some social enterprise. On your comment, Al, actually the foundation is promoting it. We just recently sponsored a trip of the Dr. Palencia in Boracay to promote the use of Vigormin for household septic tanks. So it is possible to have that collaboration. In fact, we're promoting Dr. Palencia together with the other awardees. It's our way of contributing to the engineering profession and bridging the academe as well.
Thank you, Ferds. I mean, definitely we need more models of that kind of a collaboration and success for a technology out of a university. Unfortunately, it's not UP. So we have to create some for UP as well. Thank you.
Actually, 3 of
next.
our 5 awardees were from UP in 2015. Yeah.
Okay, nice to hear that.
Thank you.
I think I don't see the chat box, Giselle. Maybe you can take the questions, possibly. I don't see it from my side.
Let's get Val first.
Yes.
Val.
Just wanted
there you go, Val.
Thank you. I just wanted to add quickly to what Chicho said earlier. I think the response you got from industry is in itself part of the problem statement we have. In that, the different stakeholders in that whole value chain do not see themselves as interdependent with one another. So, having said that, one of the things we've talked about in UP ERDFI is bring in the concept of designing for manufacturability to the research end, because there are principles and concepts already developed that enable research to already understand, what are the downstream issues that could occur with respect to their concepts. But of course, that's an easier said than done, because that's really bringing the factory next to R&D, which again is something that has been proven to be effective. I was with Intel for several years. I was in the downstream, and at some point we found ourselves at the butt of customer issues, and a lot of these were traced to R&D or manufacturability problems. So what we did is we took the initiative to sit down with R&D folks, invite them to the factories, have them set up a small line, if you will, so that we both understood what it took to really bring products to the market, and that I think brings home the point that we need to connect these stakeholders together, in a very deliberate and intentional way, so that we learn from each other and that we understand what each other's problems are. And that's something that we in UP ERDFI are really looking at how to develop and perhaps institutionalize over the years. Thank you.
Thanks,
Th-
Val.
Thank,
I think
thank you, thank you, Val. I just want to comment indeed that I think we, in the interest of time, we will probably have to move. But that's exactly what I want, or I'm hoping the power couple of Chicho and Risa are going to do moving forward to get us closer to industry participation. So I think Giselle wants me to say that it's Risa's turn. Hating kapatid. It's already 9 o'clock.
yeah, so it's
Go
9
ahead.
Just wanted to point out Cora had a question. It might be safe for later. And Chicho, here's another question to you. Having been tapped to evaluate UST projects, have you?
I already asked that.
I'm sorry. So sorry.
Okay na, okay na. Okay na yan.
Yeah, so we'll now move on to Risa.
Thank you, Chicho.
Yeah, thank you. I might have to log off because we have another meeting.
I know. That's why I'm very conscious of the time. Thank you, Chicho, for the presentation.
For those who, for those who missed some of the parts of this chat, it will be posted. The recording will be posted on the PAASE website soon after some editing or cleaning up. So we are not losing any of these materials that we have in our chats. They're all there in our website. So at this point, I'd like to welcome Riza Mantaring to give her talk. And we know the many awards of our next speaker. And she is a former president and CEO of Sun Life Financial. And she is a former president of the Management Association of the Philippines, 2019. And she is independent director and sits in the board of directors of many leading companies in the Philippines. So without much further ado, maybe ask Riza to give a presentation.
Yes. Morning, everyone. I just will give you a very short background of the life insurance and asset management industry. I'm an electrical engineering graduate, but Chicho always says I'm a fake engineer. So let me now tell you a little bit more about the world in which I ended up. I'm disabled from screen sharing. I can't share my screen.
You got it, Giselle?
Okay, I got it here now. Wait just a minute. Let me just. Okay. Okay. You see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just give you a very brief background on insurance and asset management, because this is probably alien to a lot of the people that are on this call. So let me just, okay. Oops. Sorry, you went. So actuaries are probably what you would call the original data scientists, because as you know how actuaries work, they work with large volumes of data. In fact, in insurance, it's really all about the law of large numbers. So we say they are the original data scientists working with millions of data points and developing data models from which we do our pricing and product development. But currently, insurance looks very different from what it used to look maybe just a decade or so ago. There's much development in artificial intelligence and data analytics, and we're seeing some of this in our own company, and I'll show you some of that later. So there's development in underwriting and claims assessment. For example, we can now underwrite in Sun Life, for example, just using a selfie that you would send us. We would be able to tell your age. We'll be able to tell some of your health conditions. It's still being validated for different ethnicities, because one of the questions we had was, your data set right now are Caucasians and basically North Americans. Will this work for Asians, given the differences in the characteristics, the facial features? So that's being worked on. Claims assessment is another area where there's a lot of development. When you go through a claims process, it can be quite painful for some. For example, for motor car accidents, you take pictures of your car, you send it in, you fill out all sorts of forms, etc. Same thing for those for deaths. It can be quite painful. For some companies like Sun Life, all they require is a death certificate and claimant statement. But for some, they can really require so many documents, barangay clearance, all sorts of that to be able to pay a claim. And the reason for that is it's not all trying to stall, but trying to determine whether the claim is actually valid or fraudulent. Then fraud detection and credit analysis is another application in life insurance. Again, using data analytics and some artificial intelligence, they're able to tell whether an application could be potentially fraudulent, for example. And for credit, looking at your past history, how much of a credit risk are you going to be? Customer profiling and segmentation is another one where based on your social media activity, for example, based on where you live, your habits, where you go, they'll already be able to profile you as a client. One of the things we look at, for example, is moral hazard. And in the past, that would mean what's your job? What are the things that, if we're really suspicious, we may even send a private investigator to look into your habits? Because things like, are you involved in gambling? Are you involved in all of those? You would probably not be eligible for insurance. Then real-time rate setting is an interesting one, and this is actually happening now in New York. Sorry, in Europe, and for certain companies of which I'm aware. What happens in insurance when you do rate setting is once a year, the actuaries are going to look at all the data you have on your actual claims experience for the year versus what you originally assumed when that product was developed and when the application was issued. And see, were you close to your assumptions? Were you not? Are you going to require a difference in rates in the future? One major activity we had, for example, in 2007 was when interest rates were really dropping, and we said this is not sustainable because our assumptions were at a certain level of interest rate. And what happened then was we had to change our product portfolio entirely because we saw that the current products were no longer going to be sustainable in the future. Now, because of all regulations and internal rules, those existing products would already have been protected and properly reserved for, because you would have the assets backing all those liabilities, and you wouldn't be allowed to touch them. So we set off that block already. Now, some insurance companies may not be as prudent. So one thing you need to look at is also look at what those companies you deal with, what are their practices. But now they can actually do this real time using artificial intelligence. As policies are issued and as claims are filed, the rates are constantly being adjusted. And what this has done is make insurance far more affordable for those European companies' clients. What insurers will actually do is put what they call provision for adverse deviation, because you're only adjusting your rates once a year, and the lifetime of the product could be decades. So your assumptions may no longer be valid by the time the claim is filed. So we put a provision for adverse deviation. But when you're doing it real time and with the assistance of artificial intelligence, going over your millions of data points and making projections and inferences into the future, they're able to lessen that provision for adverse deviation so that the product becomes a lot more affordable for the client. And then for customer service, we're also doing that because you've profiled the customer, so you know how they would want to deal with you. Plus, automated service is already being provided. There are bots, for example, that are being used to service clients. And then there are the digital financial advisors. We're used to being face to face with the client. With digital financial advisors, what happens is it's actually the machine that's calculating everything for you and doing your financial portfolio based on the information that you provide. So there's really a lot of development in AI and data analytics. Sadly, however, much of that is overseas because one problem we have is that the skills and talent are simply not available locally, or you would have them, but they lack the experience. And there are too many institutions that are advertising that they can turn out data scientists in 3 months or 6 months. And I'm sure all of us know that that doesn't happen. So the quantity is not there, the quality is not there. There are very few. There's some that are really, really good, but there aren't many of them, and they would all have been snapped up. Now, for Sun Life itself, um, okay, we are already using a lot of automation in the company, or we were. I'm no longer with Sun Life, but I still say we are. But Sun Life, remember, is the largest life insurer in the country and has been for a decade already. So it probably has deeper pockets than a lot of the insurers, especially the local ones, would have, and is able to afford all of this because this is costly. So we've had automated underwriting, for example, since the 90s. Now, in the 90s, this automated underwriting was rules based. We programmed the rules into the system. Now, this is becoming smarter and smarter. In our Canadian office, for example, one of the things they did was using data analytics. They looked at our entire customer base and look at the actual experience with them, and they realized that out of the more than 90 questions that we asked on an application form, only 9 of them had any real bearing on the outcome. Now imagine the implications for clients. Rather than filling out pages and pages of application forms, you could basically do it on a single page. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how other companies do it. That's even better than that. So just only 9. Unfortunately, maybe because of fear, because of all of that, the underwriting team in Sun Life did not approve the shift to those 9 questions because they wanted more experience and more study. But over time, I'm sure that's going to happen. We use data analytics locally for underwriting. As mentioned, part of that is the automated underwriting, and then the customer profiling for marketing and sales. So in determining, for example, the next best offer, we look at our client base and see, based on the profile of that client, what product are they most likely to buy next? And so we hand that information over to their financial advisor so that they can sell it to the client. And that's very successful. We're still compiling the numbers locally, but in our UK office, typically, if you approach a client, you'll be able to sell 1 out of 10 clients that you approach. Using all of this, they're able to sell to one out of 2, okay, which again, much far higher productivity for the advisor. We also had some policies that were maturing, and we gave, after running that, we gave the information to the advisor on, for those with maturing policies, what product are they likely to buy next, so that they can go back and offer those products. Again, that's been very successful. We've used it for advisor profiling, trying to figure out what's the profile of a successful advisor. But so far, this one hasn't been really successful because the results didn't make sense to me at that time. So they're refining that further. We're using a lot of bots in the company. Originally, for the very first application was for address changes. Clients are sending in this information on address changes or changing the address. And these routine tasks are really something that nobody wants to do. So using bots, that's all automated now. And we found that so far, for customer service, for accounting, all the tasks that are really tedious, the bots are 3 times more productive than the humans were. You know, they never get sick, they're never absent, they never have to go to the restroom. So they're thrice as productive. They don't make errors, and the people are a lot happier. And then it's also used for audit now. Previously, audit was sampling, but now they can do 100% review of all the transactions because it's all automated. And transactions are flagged if if there's something out of the ordinary with them. So it's happening, but again, much of this is using applications that were developed here, although there's already a data analytics team that's doing all of this customer profiling, implementing the bots, advisor profiling, and so on. Okay. Other applications that we've seen globally, and these are actual applications that are already happening. So Lapitus does underwriting using a selfie. This is a lot more advanced than what we had in Sun Life. Based on your selfie, they can already tell your health profile, what illnesses you're likely to have, what you already have, and then they pair it with dynamic questioning to validate what they've seen, plus for fraud detection. So they ask you a series of questions, and based on your response, they ask you a different question, and based on your response, a different question. So if they detect that it's likely to be fraudulent, you'll be getting a different set of questions. So dynamic questioning. Lemonade is a non-life insurer that issues policies in 90 seconds. Remember what I said earlier about reducing the 91 questions to 9? This one has gone even one further. Just based on your profile, what they can get from your public information, and minimal information that you submit, they can issue the policy in 90 seconds. They can pay claims in 3 seconds. Because using AI and machine learning, they can already tell whether the claim is valid or it's likely to be fraudulent. So the fraud detection is very good. Zhong'an Insurance in China is fully online, and they've already issued 7.2 billion products to 429 million customers. Alipay, Ant Financial just introduced their insurance product in China, and within 6 months, they had 50 million clients. Now, in the 125 years that life insurance has been in existence in the country, Sun Life was the very first insurer here. We don't even have 50 million clients. There's something like 5 or 6 million individual insurance clients across all companies. And if you include the micro insurance, which is really very small product amounts, it's probably about 30 million at any one time, and they don't actually stay in force. So the potential is huge. And if you're an Ant Financial, you can do this because you already have all the information about the customer. China doesn't have the data privacy rules that most jurisdictions have. So it's quite easy for them. They know what your spending habits are, probably how much you earn, where you go, what your lifestyle habits are. So for an underwriter, that's paradise. I've always said when I was CEO, even years ago, imagine if we could mine all the data that people have on social media, you could easily tell how to underwrite them, probably without asking too many questions. So there's really a lot of potential in the industry, but right now in the Philippines, it's really not the resource is the hardest probably to find. And yet we know some of the things we've seen, for example, credit scoring application done by a UPIE student, it was really impressive, but those are few and far between. Now, ongoing developments, behavioral pricing and usage-based insurance. So with the Internet of Things, given your medical devices, if you exercise, if you do all of this, then you get lower rates. And except that our joke was in the Philippines, you put one of those Fitbits, they might put it on their dog. Then you're going to see they're taking 20,000 steps a day. Of course, we were just joking about that. And then usage-based insurance. For example, for motor car insurance, you only pay for what you actually use. So if you're not traveling, then you're not paying for it. And you can do that again because you're able to track what the customer is doing. Then customer experience, coverage, personalization. Right now, the products are standard, and you can just choose from basically an array of products, and they'll tailor it with different riders. But because of the data analytics and AI capabilities, now it's moving towards personalizing. It's like really an individual product for an individual rather than standard sets of products. And then faster customized claim settlement. You've already seen an example of that. One of the issues, of course, is regulations, because what we're finding, not just here, but in other countries, is that regulators often struggle to keep up with innovation. And in some instances, that has really killed the innovation. For example, we came up with a small amounts of life insurance to be sold over cell phones in partnership with one of the telcos. And this was going to help solve the problem of financial inclusion, because the coverage penetration of insurance in the country is really, really low. So we said, let's sell it over cell phones because everyone has a cell phone. But because there were no regulations to cover it, it took a year just for the regulator to study it. And it was 2 years before we were able to offer it. And by that time, it was, the telco had lost interest. We had to look for other outlets. So we eventually ended up selling it on Lazada, which was approved. But one of the things that I guess has been a barrier, especially to heavily regulated industries, has really been regulators struggling to catch up with innovation. So that's my short introduction on our industry. So
Thank you very much, Risa. So we're not alone in the medical space and having problems with regulation. You too in the insurance and actuary space are having that problem. I think there's a question from TIP President Beth Lahos regarding a little bit more description about the bots that they're developing technologies that can service industries, and she wants to learn more about how do the bots interact in your...
Basically, we
please...
just run them on the computers. The files are in the machine. We run the bots are just continually running, and they're processing whatever comes in against the files that are against our databases, basically. So for example, address changes are input by somebody, and then it takes care of just doing it on the machine. The bots are constantly running. Then for accounting, for reconciliation, for example, it's run against the databases that we have.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask Mr. Emmanuel to kindly mute his mic? Yeah, he just left. But I think National Scientist Raul Fabella, do you have a question? Trying to see who's raising their hand. I think it's Giselle asking, should you ask a question? Or wanting to.
We have National Scientist Raul Fabella, who's also with the Asian Institute of Management, perhaps to share his insights with us. And well, Risa and Chicho might know that there are many things going on at the AIM since Chris Mantorola and Erica Lagara from UP Physics joined the team and then invited Raul. And as Raul, they have established a PhD in data science program. And Rita, I take note of your comment that the original data scientists are actuaries. And so we're saying that I think the basic training and the basic course in undergraduate would be statistics. Are we right about that? Maybe NS Raul can say something about it as well.
You can unmute yourself, Dr. Fabella. Thank you.
I am not in the technical sciences. I am a social scientist, so my interest is a little bit different. My communication is largely my interest is largely connected with I guess Chicho's expertise.
Okay.
Chicho has already answered me privately. Of course, I follow the career of Honhai Manufacturing in China, which is, of course, the largest private employer now, I think, barring a U.S. company. And my interest is why our conglomerates are hardly touching base with manufacturing. Most of our conglomerates are in the services sector. But IMI is, of course, very interesting simply because it is one unique example of a Philippine conglomerate dipping its finger into manufacturing. So my interest is whether there are followers to the Ayala example because I am interested in bringing Philippine conglomerates into manufacturing instead of just remaining in the services sector.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
That's for anybody because I think Chicho has left.
Yeah, I can answer that question actually, Dr. Fabella. I'm with you in FEF, by the way.
Yes, I know Riza. I follow your comments there.
Yes, when it comes to manufacturing in the Philippines, one of the problems I think of industry, one is the high costs that we have, power, labor, and then the infrastructure. In terms of getting to the ports, for example, if you're exporting, our infrastructure is quite poor. The other one is the labor rigidities, which you're very aware of. Our labor laws are not conducive to growing, especially in something like manufacturing, which is high labor component right now in the country. So I think what deters a lot of investors, both foreign and local, is if you hire people, you can't fire them. And we've actually had the same experience in our in Sun Life, for example. I've been asked by a regional office, that person is obviously incompetent. Why can't why haven't you fired them? And if they've been there for months, and I say, well, you can't because labor laws, you basically have to give them 6 months under performance and another 6 months before you can actually let people go. So the labor laws are not conducive, I think, to that. So high costs, um, labor laws, and to be able to compete is tough. And one of the things I remember Chicho telling me before was they were trying to develop this module. The problem was the selling price of the completed product from a Taiwanese company was equal to just one of the components that they were acquiring, because we don't have the scale. They were selling and they were producing in the millions. We were only producing in the thousands. So because of the lack of scale, we just didn't have the economies that others do. So I think um, even for IMI, I know you would have seen the financials. It's been a struggle to stay profitable. And they're already probably the largest in terms of electronics manufacturing in the country. So.
I understand that. I had an interaction with somebody who was in Beijing for a workshop, and they had a Honhai resource person. And the Honhai resource person, without being asked, he said that actually we are thinking of spreading our wings. And one of the countries that we are is in our sights is the Philippines. And he said we haven't done a gun because there are two things. At that time, we had a kind of a geopolitical problem with China. And he said our main market is, of course, China. And the other is the high power cost.
Yeah.
So he mentioned exactly just two things, the geopolitical problem at that time. And now, of course, the high power cost is still with us.
Yeah.
But let me just say something about what the other thing that affects your selling price to the export market. Throughout the pandemic year, the Philippine peso has been appreciating from 52 to 48. That follows a kind of a trend by other countries. But look, there is one country that is attracting a lot of direct foreign investment in manufacturing,
Vietnam.
and that is Vietnam.
Vietnam.
If you look at the trajectory of Vietnam's exchange rate, Vietnam never allowed the dong to depreciate. It's a kind of a credible commitment they're telling their potential investors, where we have your back covered. We are not going to give you incentives, fiscal incentives, and then get it back in terms of appreciating peso, which is why everyone in the platform, export platform industry is in Vietnam.
Mm.
And look at the Philippines. No, it's the opposite. So there are many factors. Logistically, power, the exchange rate uncertainty, and presumably others as well. Labor, for example. No,
Labor.
labor cost, and labor rigidities.
Yeah. Also,
So in China, there's no in Vietnam, there's no labor unions.
Yeah. Yes.
There's just one labor conference connected with the government, and they're not. I think they're not allowed to strike. Okay. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I'm a social scientist, and manufacturing is very close to my heart. And at this low income level, there's still room for manufacturing, but especially getting into the slipstream of MNCs. Problem is, of course, structural here. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pabella. I think there's a raised hand. I think your co-associate in MAP, Cora Claudio. You wanted to unmute and show yourself and ask the question.
I have unmuted, but I'm not going to show myself because I'm not decent. I just woke up because I slept early in the morning. Okay. I found the course development interest of Chicho very interesting because I am deeply interested in science, technology, engineering, education. And I think a big challenge for us is to get the interest of our youth, of our young Filipinos to go into STE. I sit in the board of the Science Centrum, and every time we launch an exhibition in the provinces, because we have 7 mobile exhibit sets, I always take a quick survey and I ask the young visitors, usually from 10 years old and above, what course they will take up in college. 60% of them, without fail, say they will take up criminology. Because they want to become policemen, because they watch Provinciano. Okay, so I guess my question to all of us is, in addition to what we are doing in the Science Centrum, promoting science and technology, what else can we do? One thing is, I'm really impressed by this couple, Chicho and Riza. Now I know why their children are very talented, no? Because they are very talented parents, no? And we start in our homes. And the second opportunity is really in our schools. Now, my only son, whom I wanted to see become an engineer too, like me, went to a school as a scholar, entrance scholar, but then had a teacher in physics who gave everybody a 2. So he lost his scholarship and his interest in engineering. He shifted to business economics, and it's good he's doing very well. Otherwise, I would hate this school for the rest of my life. So I think that is the challenge to us. How can we get our young people and women, especially, electrical engineering, which is Risa's course, right? Is a course that was not really attracting many women before, and I think even now, no, because it's supposed to be for men. But it as Chicho explained, there are many opportunities that require creativity. So women are, I think, more creative than men, usually in general, and so we need more women in this field. How can we? So the challenge to all of us is, how can we attract our youth and our women, especially, to go into science, technology, and engineering?
Okay, thank you for your question. I think, Risa, I'll rephrase it, since you're part of Makati Business Club and you were head of MAP. Is there something that the business community is actively pursuing right now to promote STEM, not only for, indeed, undergraduate, and I'm on the board of SEI ERDT for masters and PhDs. But I'm wondering whether the business community is doing something about promoting more STEM students.
So there's another organization, Philippine Business for Education, which is chaired by your father-in-law.
Yeah, I know PBED very well.
Yeah, PBED. So that works with the schools, works on teacher training, and it also has a program to promote STEM education.
Okay.
Then there's individual, not as an organization, but for example, a Unilab also has
Yes.
quite a comprehensive program to
I just
promote.
took on the board chairmanship for system actually.
Okay.
So
Unilab.
Center for Integrated STEM Education. Yeah. For
Yeah, so
Unilab.
Unilab
Unilab's
really
yeah.
promotes STEM education.
Mhm.
And then, so on an individual basis, a lot of these large corporations and conglomerates are promoting STEM education through programs, through
Okay.
through things like, for example, their Shark Tank, where they invite all these. Union Bank is another one that
Okay.
is heavily promoting innovation and STEM in particular. Of course, for banking needs, right? Where they have Shark Tank, which incentivizes students from various schools to be able to come up with with
Apps.
apps,
Apps, I think.
whatever, yeah,
Yeah.
applications or something that they can use, and they actually implement them in the workplace, and the prizes are pretty substantial. But there's no one
Single.
coordinated
Yeah.
effort other than what
Mm.
PPED is doing.
Yeah,
And
that's my natural lead in of asking you if you're amenable to doing a similar model to PBED as Philippine Business for SNT, which has been my advocacy for 3 years now. No one, I wanted Ed Chua to lead it, but he's too busy. He has even Philippine Business for Environment now, besides Makati Business Club.
yeah.
So specific for SNT, do you think that's a viable organization among the business community?
Rather than put up another org, why not do it under PBED? Because PBED already has
I I
structure.
I did ask both my father-in-law as well as their president, of course, Chito Salazar. It's kind of side view, and they're more focused on the big picture, K+12, the whole work, minimize the work to industry type activities. STEM is really just a subset, and it's not real focus. So that's when I found the need actually by getting everyone involved in SNT, from the Aboitises to the Gokongways to the Cs as well. They have their own foundation. No single way to lead it, and I'm still looking for a leader. Ed Chua would have been a natural, but he's so booked. He just took on DLS, the LaSalle Philippines as well. So I'm looking at you and Chicho actually to lead it. Please, please.
You know, the difficulty with having so many business orgs is you get dispersal of the resources and the attention. It's not just the resources, but the attention. So, and the other thing to think about is, while there are all these initiatives going on for SNT, the trend now is to increase liberal arts actually in the colleges, because the pace of change is so fast that what you really need to develop are the critical thinking skills in your students and the ability to learn. And to do that, what helps develop critical thinking skills? It would be the humanities. So I think there's a bit of a, some questioning going on now, and a change in thinking that rather than emphasize purely STEM, we should be emphasizing more of the liberal arts in our education, so that you train them for the critical thinking and the learning skills that are needed for Industry 4.0. Because whatever you teach now in the colleges will probably be obsolete in 5 years. So
Correct. I have two girls. I have 2 girls, 10 and 5, and they're all about critical thinking and sustainable development goals. I am not pushing them to science. I agree.
I think
yes, Giselle.
and teacher would be good mascots, and you have your children to show for it, and showcase you in academe and industry and government. And well, PAASE has this advocacy also on STEM, and that's why we're putting together all our materials in our PAASE website, and we're actually classifying the materials, videos like this webinar, this chat, under the UN 17 SDG goals plus COVID. So we will have all of these materials in place, and we're actually looking for a host for PAASE TV interviews. So we have a YouTube channel, and we're really looking for these hosts. And we could then promote this to all your linkages in government and industry. Okay? But at this point, I would like to call on one of our PAASE stalwarts who's in the University of Maryland. He's a social scientist, a psychologist. Mario Santo Domingo, are you still around, a member of our board? And he's had a direct involvement in the Meyerhoff method for STEM education. So Mario, are you there? He was formerly with the UPCIDS when he was still in UP. Can you unmute yourself, Mario, or are you no longer around? Let me check. Okay, but then if Mario's not around, I think what we can do, Al, is the question of Therese.
May I add, Dr. Gisela, may I add something to my question?
Yes.
What I'm trying to do now, I just had a board meeting of our Asian Institute of Journalism and Communication yesterday. I think we should encourage not only the business community in general, but the communication community in general to be involved here. Our challenge in STEM is similar to the challenge that agriculture and fishery are now facing. We now have very good state universities and colleges in the countryside, but they do not have students going into agriculture because because of the perception of our young people that their parents are farmers and fisher folks, and until now they're still poor. So I think what we need here is good communication program, and what your plan to have a TV program or YouTube is really a part of that, no?
Yes.
So I'm now developing a program, a communication program on this, which will include both print, broadcast, multimedia, no? And I will need everybody's help here.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, create the models for you, clearly, because that's the challenge that we are faced. We don't have enough Bigormin, as Secretary Boy described. We have very few role models to actually describe the business sector as a success stories. So we have our work to do as well. Yes. Thank you, Cora, for the input. Yes, Giselle.
Yes. So Al, we have to read this question from Therese Alejandrino on the IP. Ma'am Riza, thanks for sharing company's experience when involving the Academe in data analytics related projects. Are there no gaps, problems that may be resolved for collaborative research with the Academe? For instance, the IP, which is private, has its high performance computing laboratory that enables our data scientists to work on extensive data range. Okay, so she's with the Technocore Catalyst Projects and Partnerships Unit of the Technological Institute of the Philippines. Very progressive university led by Elizabeth Lajos.
Yeah, you know, everybody's always looking for a competitive breakthrough. And I think the problem with asking the insurers, for example, or asset managers, is there anything that we can do for you, is they won't be able to imagine what you can do for them, because like Chicho said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. So they know the business very well, but they don't know the potential that the technology can provide. So I think one thing that could really help is if the academe or researchers could understand the business and then visualize what you can actually do. You will have people in the business who do understand technology. I was fortunate because I have a technical background. So Sun Life was always the first in implementing all these technological changes. But for many people, even, I mean, I have to confess, even our leadership team, there were very few that actually understood. So whenever you start talking about, you know, we could put AI here and AI there, people's faces turn blank. So are there areas? There's a lot, really a lot that you can do with analytics. That's why for example, I discussed what some of those other companies overseas are already doing. We're not able to do that here. So if you could do research, for example, the most painful in the customer journey is applying for life insurance. We said this industry is probably the one that makes it hardest for anyone to become a customer, because you have to fill out, for example, 17 pages of application forms, and then they've cut it down now to 8. But if I'm the client, all I want is to be insured. So if you can give me something that, just based on your analysis of the client's, assuming, for example, you could work with a telco. If you could work with a telco based on their cell phone number, you'd already know their travel patterns, right? My son, by the way, is a data scientist who used to work for one of the conglomerates. And he told me, Mom, if you knew what we knew about you, you'd be scared. So they know they know where you go, what you buy, etc. But of course, they can't share that with you because of data privacy and information. If there's a way that you could take all that information, find a way to do it legally, maybe anonymized, okay, and then come up with a model that says, Al Serafica, here, all you have to do is sign the application form and or signal your concurrence electronically. They're doing everything online now, and you're insured. That's it. You don't have to you don't have to fill out 17 pages. You don't have to go to a hospital for your stress test, for your all of this, and you have that. That would really be, for me, fantastic. That would be a huge competitive advantage for an insurer. And then fraud detection, of course, there's a lot of that already on the market. But that's the biggest pain point for me in insurer is the onboarding of the client. If you could make it easy just by using data, that would be fantastic.
Oh, that's great, Lisa. And more data scientists coming our way in the near future. You could look at the PhD data science program of the AIM, and it's a very tough program, maybe as high or even higher than the standards in UP. And we know that Chris Monterola and Erica Lagara worked at A-Star in Singapore. So they're applying the standards of Singapore, and they have collaborating faculty from all over the world to guide our students. And the first 8 PhD students in the program are mostly from UP, engineering and physics. So I think, there's a bright future and we should not lose hope. And we just need to do our own share in trying to move forward this advocacy. So important for STEM at the basic level to the tertiary level to the postgraduate level. And in the past, we have members, we have experts who have developed methods like the Bernitos, the Ramon Magsaysay awardees. Chris and Marivic Bernito have this dynamic learning program that's very, very science-oriented, it's physics-oriented, but now move to biology and chemistry. We have Gani Tapang, who developed the Visor program that earned championing. So we have the experimental, and then we have also the pedagogical, and together the Bernitas are promoting the liberal arts. So that's so important. Well, at this point, I see others in the audience whom I would like to hear from. President,
can I just, Giselle?
Yes.
Can I just add one thing? I think for data, to really harness the power of data analytics, you have to include artificial intelligence and machine learning. The AI part, I think, at least from what I know, others may know, you may know better from the Academe, is pretty weak in the country. We don't have the AI specialists here.
It's great that Chris Monterola has incorporated AI in the program. So look into the PhD data science program of the Asian Institute of Management. So at this point, I would like to call on Elizabeth Lajos and Joe Cruz to give your comments.
Beth, you can unmute. Or Joe. There's Joe. Joe's thing is ready.
Okay. I would like to pick up on what Lisa suggested about liberal arts as a foundation for critical thinking. However, I would like to extend it a little bit to the question of what is a good undergraduate background. I think it should be balanced, okay? In what sense? If you look at the typical liberal arts curriculum, they don't have as much science and math as engineering does. Now, engineering has the most liberal arts component in its program. Not only is it outcomes based, of course, it's also uh, favoring critical thinking. But my point is, if you look at a curriculum that's the most balanced in every way, I think engineering has that critical thinking part, but it has AI there for sure because we take probability and statistics, we study AI in various forms, and machine learning is there already. And so I would say, and I guess this is partly in response to Cora also, who was advocating a different engineering program. But I think the bachelor's degree, the way we have it in the Philippines, is outcomes based already. And it is more balanced than any other program you can pick up. In particular, it has more liberal arts than liberal arts has science.
Good one.
So in terms of balance, I think that's it. We may tinker, and improve it a little bit, but basically, we're looking for a balanced education. And actually, I wanted to ask Riza, because you're an electrical engineer,
Yeah.
and your husband is an electrical engineer. The president of Philippine Airlines is an electrical engineer. The treasurer of BPI is an electrical engineer. I wonder what you got to move into something out of engineering almost immediately. Let's say you went to insurance. What aspect of your education did you find most useful?
Yeah.
Was it part of electrical engineering, or was it the arts and science and
Actually,
liberal arts?
yeah. So actually, I joined Sun Life as a head of IT because I took my master's degree in computer science. So my
Okay.
career was actually in computers. But I
Okay.
agree with you. By the way, I'm not advocating that you focus on liberal arts. I agree with you that it should be balanced. I think my statement was more a reaction to the trend to remove make liberal arts optional in the universities. But I agree with you that it should be balanced. And for me, the biggest value, I've never used any of my electrical engineering courses, but the value engineering gave me was the analytical and thinking skills. Like you said, critical thinking, it's also there in engineering. And so when faced with a situation, for example, you're automatically already thinking of you're analyzing it. And one thing an engineering education teaches you is what could possibly go wrong. And that's why I would at one time I met with the executives from Citibank, and they told me, "You mean we're entrusting our millions to an electrical engineer?" And I told them, remember, I said, engineers prepare for the worst possible situations. I told him. So, if an engineer was in charge, you wouldn't have had the financial crisis in 2008. I was joking them. So I think that's what really helped. And so, for example, I get financial reports from the CFO, and I know right away when something was wrong, just from the numbers. I'd say this can't be right, and you have to explain to them why it can't be right because they're more used to just following formulas.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I agree with it should be balanced.
Riza,
Thank you.
as critical thinking, it's quantitative analytical thinking, right?
Also, yes, yes.
Training. So, Elizabeth, Beth,
Yeah. Yeah, yes, thank you. I wanted to share that Dr. Joe Cruz is a professional electrical engineer. So you know where he's coming from. We call him a Renaissance man because he's also good in the arts as well as in his discipline. Anyway, I want to thank Riza and Chicho because of your very incisive sharing. And I wanted to share with Riza that with the thoughts that you shared, we could actually give our students, our new students, in professional science master's degree in data science, partnership that we have with the USAID Stride and CloudSwift and Emerson, some ideas on projects that they can have with the insurance business in mind and the needs that you pointed out about onboarding of clients and other things like those. And I also wanted to thank Chicho particularly for the insight about building platforms. I think it's also connected with what you said. You have to study the industry very well or a particular business and then come up with a possible solution to a problem that they might not even have identified yet, or they are identifying wrongly, and then come in with that platform and propose something in answer to the question also of Therese, one of our people in Technocore. And I would also like to share again, because this was in another group that I shared this, that a PAASE member, Dr. Vince Faustino of Yale, is actually helping us with our Siglavent automated emergency ventilator, which we are scheduling for more testing, more validation, and for FDA approval. So thank you for all the sharing. We've learned so much, and my people have learned so much. My graduate school deans are in the meeting right now, learning also from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Again, Risa and Joe, you remember general education program of UP from our time. And it's still the same. And that's where we learned all our skills to survive and succeed. And our program is actually based on, US, Harvard, Radcliffe programs, the architects of which were students in those universities, in great universities. And recently, during my time when I was at AA, we visited Harvard and we learned the importance of the general education program. And the College of Arts and Letters fought very hard not to reduce the number of liberal arts courses in the GE program of UP. And we said, oh, we could have an advanced GE program, say in the engineering sciences. And Dean Aura Matias was supporting me in this. And also then Vice Chancellor Pacheco, saying that, you could have an advanced GE program that is oriented towards problem solving in the field, okay? But then the approach to problem solving is holistic, meaning it's not just engineering or science, it's social cultural as well. So I think it's very important. The point that you raised is very important. Now, I think that while we have to address so many problems in STEM education, I think Joe Cruz has done so well by trying to get the engineering programs of IT and Batangas State University accredited, okay, with the ABET. And so you now have US accredited engineering programs in these two universities. We're still trying to get this into the UP. And that's, I think, so important, just to raise the quality of our engineering graduates and perhaps to be an attractant to many more engineering courses in these universities.
Giselle, I have a question for Risa.
Yes, just a moment. Yes, Risa, you raised the point of quality and quantity of workers in data science and engineering. So I think at this point, Al, please ask.
Yeah, Risa, our challenge, we've been implementing here what they call the Innovation Core program that's implemented in the US for helping technologies to get adapted by industry. And part of that learning is to form a team where it's composed of a scientist, an entrepreneur, and an industry mentor. And we've implemented 2 rounds, 2 years of that with LaSalle, funded by the UST and USAID Stride program. And our challenge has always been finding industry mentors in the spaces of the technologies that we're in. And I wanted to seek your help in how best can we, I mean, this 1 hour that you shared with us already is so valuable in the sense that we're hearing a customer for potential inputs, as Beth has signified for her full university with 16,000 students to chew on. What can we do to do more of these? I know Jaza has been coming to NAST as well, and we wanted to kind of voice it out to you, being part of the captains of industry. on how best can we invite you and your colleagues, fellow CEOs. I invited my father-in-law for LaSalle in next week. So they become receptive because of the traffic and you can just Zoom. Is this a good venue now for us to invite you? Kindly let us know.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, always happy to help. I think you'll find if you talk to industry people, they'll always be happy to help the academe. The problem has been finding time, as you said, but also maybe if you can have your value proposition clearer for them, there'll be more incentive to go. For example, if they know that you can solve the
There you
problem
go.
that they actually have,
Mhm.
then they'll be willing to devote all the time to you to help you solve that problem.
Perfect. That's exactly what the ICOR program is, to develop a value proposition for specific stakeholder, customer that's part of that ecosystem. Indeed, we will try to take that advice.
That's wonderful, Al and Lisa. And like we're 10 o'clock on the dot.
Mhm.
And I know everyone's busy. So I think this has been very enlightening and productive meeting. There's more of this, Risa. It's unlimited. We can do Zoom. It's liberating in time and space for all of us. And I think that what you and Chicho can do would be in electrical engineering parlance, adapters. I don't know, you have conductors, rheostats, but you would be the adapters. And you'd have to match, or you've got to connect industry with us. Cora Claudio was given a set of 14 agri-aqua manufacturing project briefs prepared by PAASE members, led by local and foreign PAASE members combined. Okay, we have the expertise also from the foreign members. And her comment was, how about we give you the problems and then you find the solutions to us? So this is a kind of matching that we need from leaders in industry who have a very, very strong academic background. So I think with that, we have a ways forward. So we hold a chat, and this is a conversation that just keeps going on and growing. And I think we are for a follow through. Am I right, Al? We don't.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Actually, we will be inviting you again as part of the National Academy of Science. The president just wrote me yesterday to invite. I already asked Coco Alquas of MBC to ask for the next your board meeting, that we can insert ourselves for even half an hour from the National Academy, if possible. So I think it's an ongoing conversation. Indeed, Risa, thank you very much for sharing your time. And I hope you'll be as popular as the power couple from BioNT. And we just developed the vaccine from Germany, or migrants from Turkey. To me, couples are always between like Chris Bernido, the Magsaysay awardees on education. I always like couples. So thank you. Thank you.
Showcases, and we have national scientist Raul Fabella, who's a member of the NAST Execom here, and he will attest to the exciting conversations that we had here today. So on behalf of the PAASE, I'd like to thank Risa and Chicho for sharing their knowledge. I always say, the more you know you do not know. The more you don't know. See, I am a believer. That's one of my taglines as well. So I'd like to thank participants who joined us today from government, from PAASE, from the private sector as well, family and friends. Please join us again at future Fireside Chats. We will have one next week, hopefully with the National Research Council of the Philippines, which is affiliated with the DOST. And then with the National Academy of Science and Technology on December 10. And finally with the DOST officials on December 17. And that will cap our Fireside Chat series this year. And we also have a series of PAASE webinars every Friday. And tomorrow it is Dr. Danny Casimiro of Sanofi, one of our top-ranking scientists, PhD scientists in the vaccinology field. And he's going to talk to us about prospects for the COVID-19 vaccines at Sanofi and in other companies in the world. So please free to join us. And we will be posting a sister link PAASE events announcements to share with you all the webinars that we're holding every week this December, coming December, and all the way to next year. So with that, on behalf of Al and myself, I'd like to thank you, and please stay on with us. We are what you call a persistent and tenacious group, and we're just gonna band together until we get some results out. I'd like to quote again Tito Alica of UP Earth. It's such a long saying we've got to keep our eye on the ball, and let's just focus on some specific targets as well. Okay, so Riza and Chicho, please be our adapters and our matchmakers between industry and academia, and be this couple with your children, okay, for science, engineering, and technology. Thank you so much, everyone. Till the next
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Photos,
Thank you.
photos
Thank
of
you.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're trying to be efficient here. We have no staff, no nothing. We're just doing on our own, by ourselves.
Good job, Giselle.
So much. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.